Mason Carter floated in his small ship among the asteroids. He was a salvage pilot. That meant he looked for old, broken ships and space junk to sell. It wasn't exciting work, but it paid the bills. Today seemed like any other day as his ship drifted through the quiet darkness of space. Then everything changed. A huge tear opened in the empty space ahead of him. It wasn't like anything Mason had ever seen before. Through this strange hole came a massive ship. Its surface was odd. It didn't reflect light like normal metal. Instead, it seemed to swallow the light around it. Mason tried to turn his ship around. His hands moved fast over the controls, but it was too late. A bright beam shot out from the alien ship and caught his small craft. He was trapped. "Hello? This is Mason Carter of Earth. Can anyone hear me?" He called into his radio. No one answered. The beam pulled his ship toward the alien vessel. As he got closer, Mason saw that the strange ship was huge, bigger than any human spacecraft he'd ever seen. Its sides opened like a mouth, revealing a vast hangar bay inside. Many smaller ships were parked there, all with strange designs Mason had never seen before. His ship was pulled inside the hangar. Through his windows, Mason saw tall, slim figures moving with strange grace. They weren't human. Their skin had a rainbow shine to it like the inside of a seashell, and they moved too smoothly to be people. Mason's heart beat fast. He was the first human to meet aliens, or maybe he was about to be the first human killed by aliens. He wasn't sure which was more likely. The aliens boarded his ship without asking. They wore armor that changed colors as they moved, fitting their bodies perfectly. Mason noticed they all seemed to respect one tall figure. This one had what looked like a crown growing right out of her head. It glowed with inner light. When she took off her helmet, Mason couldn't help but stare. She was beautiful, but in a way that made him feel uneasy. Her face was almost human, but too perfect. Her eyes were deep purple with strange up and down pupils like a cat's. These pupils got bigger as she looked at him. "You will come with us, human. The Ascendancy has been watching your kind for some time." Mason heard her voice, but her lips didn't move. Somehow she was speaking directly into his mind. The alien guards took Mason from his ship. They didn't hurt him, but he knew he couldn't fight back. They walked through hallways that seemed alive. The walls moved slightly, like they were breathing. The tall alien woman, who seemed to be their leader, led the way. Through big windows, Mason saw hundreds of ships just like this one. They all floated at the edge of our solar system. It looked like an invasion force ready to attack Earth. "Where are you taking me?" Mason asked. "What do you want?" The alien woman didn't answer. She led him deep into the ship to a large, fancy room. It was filled with strange furniture and soft lights. Guards stood at every door and bowed deeply when she walked past. Mason noticed how they looked at him, like they were curious about him and maybe even jealous. "I am Lysandra," the alien woman finally said into his mind. "Rest now. Tomorrow you will understand why you have been chosen." She left and the door closed behind her. Mason was alone. He looked around the room and realized something strange. This wasn't a prison cell. It was too nice. The bed was large and comfortable. There was food and water set out for him. The room looked like it was made for someone important. Mason walked to a window that showed the stars outside. Earth was just a tiny blue dot from here. He thought about his small apartment, his few friends, his boring job. None of that seemed important now. Why had these aliens taken him? Why him specifically? Lysandra had said he was chosen. But chosen for what? Mason lay down on the strange bed. It adjusted to his body, becoming perfectly comfortable. Despite his fear and confusion, he was tired. His eyes grew heavy. As he drifted off to sleep, one thought kept spinning in his mind. Tomorrow would change everything. Not just for him, but maybe for all of humanity. The last thing he saw before sleep took him was Lysandra's strange purple eyes, watching him in his memory. He didn't know if she was going to be his savior or his executioner. Either way, Mason Carter, a nobody from Earth, had just become the most important human in the universe. Mason woke up to a soft humming sound. The walls of his room changed color from dark blue to warm orange. It was like sunrise even though he was in deep space. Several aliens entered his room. They kept their eyes down and didn't speak to him. They brought clothes for him to wear. The fabric was strange. It seemed to adjust to his body temperature. When he looked directly at the patterns on the clothes, they stayed still. But when he looked away, the patterns seemed to move from the corner of his eye. After Mason dressed, 2 female guards came for him. They told him their names were Kira and Lena. Unlike yesterday, they spoke freely to him. You are on the main ship of Queen Lysandra of the Novenari Ascendancy, Kira explained. We control 17 star systems. Why am I here? Mason asked. The Queen rarely takes interest in specimens, Kira said. Mason frowned. I'm not a specimen. Lena gave him a kind look. No, you are something much more important, though you don't understand yet. They walked through the ship. Everything was beautiful and strange. The halls were wide with high ceilings. The walls glowed with soft light. Other aliens stopped to stare at Mason as he passed. They arrived at huge doors covered with star maps and math formulas. Mason recognized some of the star patterns from Earth astronomy books. But there were corrections and additions that he'd never seen before. The doors opened to reveal a massive room filled with hundreds of aliens. They were arranged in circles around a raised platform. On the platform was a throne that looked like it was carved from one giant jewel. Lysandra sat on the throne. Her skin shimmered in the light. Her crown-like growth glowed brightly. She wore flowing robes that changed color as she moved. The room went quiet as Mason entered. He felt all their eyes on him. Some looked curious, some looked angry. An old alien with almost see-through skin stepped forward. Your Radiance, the Council of Elders protest this action. The genetic compatibility protocols have not been. The protocols were made by my ancestors, Elder Voss. Lysandra cut him off. Her voice filled the room without her raising it. I can change them if I want. The genetic problem threatens our whole civilization. Human genes offer solutions our scientists have confirmed. Mason stepped forward. Would someone please explain what's happening here? Everyone went silent. The guards tensed. But Lysandra's lips curved into what might have been a smile. Of course, she said, standing up from her throne. You are in the Court of Stars, human. And you are here because after hundreds of years of careful breeding, my people face extinction. Our DNA has become too perfect and now fails to adapt to new environments. We are dying. She walked down the steps toward Mason with fluid grace. Your species, however rough and young, has remarkable genetic adaptability. Our scientists have determined that human DNA, specifically yours, contains exactly what we need. She stopped directly in front of him. That is why I brought you here. The crowd watched in shock as their queen reached out, her long fingers almost touching Mason's face. And that is why, before my entire court, I am formally requesting you become my husband. Mason couldn't speak. The room erupted in noise. Some aliens shouted in anger. Others just whispered to each other. Elder Voss looked like he might faint. This is madness, someone shouted. The royal bloodline cannot be tainted with human DNA. The bloodline will end without new genetic material, Lysandra replied calmly. Would you prefer extinction, Admiral Pike? There are other solutions, Elder Voss insisted. Other species we could consider that are more compatible with our own. None with the specific genetic markers we need, Lysandra said. The human Mason Carter has been carefully selected from billions of his kind. His DNA contains the precise adaptability factors our species requires. Mason found his voice at last. Don't I get a say in this? The room went quiet again. Aliens didn't seem used to being questioned. Of course, Lysandra said. This is a request, not a command. You will have time to consider. And if I say no? Mason asked. Then you will be returned to Earth with our thanks and we will search for other solutions, Lysandra said. But something in her eyes told Mason she didn't believe there were other solutions. Mason looked around the room. He was just a salvage pilot. Yesterday he was collecting space junk. Today an alien queen was asking him to marry her to save her species. I need time to think, he said. Lysandra nodded. You shall have it. But not too much time. Our need is urgent. As Mason was led back to his quarters, he caught snippets of conversation from the aliens around him. Some seemed to think Lysandra's plan was brilliant. Others thought it was disgusting. A few looked at him with open hatred. Back in his room, Mason stared out at the stars. Earth was out there somewhere, unaware of the alien armada hovering at the edge of the solar system. Unaware that one human had been chosen to save an entire alien civilization. Or was that the whole truth? Something about Lysandra's explanation felt incomplete. Why him specifically? And why was she in such a hurry? Mason had a feeling there was much more to this story than a simple genetic problem, and he was determined to find out what it was before he gave his answer to the Queen's shocking proposal. Days passed after Queen Lysandra's shocking proposal. The Novenari court was split into two groups, those who supported their queen's decision and those who strongly opposed bringing human genetics into their royal family line. Mason was given a helper named Paige, a younger Novenari who had studied Earth broadcasts. Unlike most of her kind, she spoke out loud instead of using mind speech. She said it helped her relate to him better. The Queen's proposal isn't just personal, Paige explained as they walked through a huge garden filled with plants from many worlds. It's about survival for our species. The ascendancy covers 17 star systems, but our population gets smaller each generation despite our advanced technology. And I'm supposed to be the solution? Mason asked in disbelief. Paige looked serious. You specifically. We've tested thousands of humans. Your genetic structure has unique qualities our scientists believe can fix the problems in our royal line. What? Paige didn't say, but Mason figured out by overhearing conversations and accessing computer terminals, when no one was looking, was much more alarming. The Novenari weren't just facing extinction through genetic problems. They were losing a war. The Krell Imperium, a hostile alien civilization from a nearby galaxy, had been systematically destroying Novenari outposts for decades. The Novenari's better technology was their only advantage, but their shrinking numbers meant they couldn't defend their territory much longer. Queen Lysandra's plan wasn't just about saving her species. It was about creating a new mixed bloodline that could inherit their technology but possess human adaptability. It was about creating warriors who could fight the Krell. Mason confronted Lysandra in her private study, where star maps showed the advancing Krell fleets. You didn't tell me I was being recruited to create soldiers, he said angrily. Lysandra didn't deny it. Would you have preferred I lied? Yes, any children we might have would inherit certain advantages. They would be stronger than either of our species alone. You're talking about weaponizing our children. I'm talking about survival, she countered, her calm exterior cracking slightly. The Krell do not negotiate or show mercy. They've already destroyed 3 of our core worlds. If they reach Earth, and they will, humanity won't even understand what's happening until it's too late. She activated a holographic display showing Earth, beautiful and vulnerable. The choice before you is bigger than either of us, Mason Carter. Help me create a future for both our peoples, or watch as 2 civilizations fall. Mason spent the next day walking through the ship, thinking about Lysandra's words. Was she telling the truth, or manipulating him? He had to know more. He found Paige in the ship's library studying old Earth books. Tell me about the Krell, he demanded. Paige looked around to make sure they were alone. They are difficult to describe. Part biological, part mechanical. They consume resources and genetic material from other species to improve themselves. They fear the Novenari because our technology exceeds theirs. For now. And they're winning the war? Paige nodded sadly. We have superior ships and weapons, but they have numbers. Billions of them spread across thousands of worlds, and they reproduce quickly, creating new soldiers in labs. Why haven't you asked Earth for help? We have billions of people too. Your technology is primitive, Paige said gently. In space combat, your best warships would be destroyed before they even knew they were under attack. The Krell would see Earth as a resource to be harvested, not an ally. Mason felt cold fear. How long until they reach Earth? At current rates of expansion, perhaps 5 of your years, unless they discover you sooner. Mason thought about everything he'd learned. If Lysandra was telling the truth, both humans and Novenari faced extinction. His decision wasn't just about him anymore. I need to speak with the Queen again, he said. But before Paige could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Red lights flashed in the hallways. What's happening? Mason asked. Paige's face showed fear. We're under attack, but how? The Krell couldn't have found us here. Guards rushed into the library. Come with us immediately, their leader ordered Mason. The Queen's orders. Is it the Krell? Mason asked as they hurried through the corridors. No, the guard said grimly. Worse, it's traitors from within. Elder Voss and his supporters have taken control of the weapon systems. They're trying to kill you. And the Queen. They rushed Mason to a secure room deep in the ship. Through the windows, he could see fighting in other parts of the vessel. Energy weapons fired, leaving scorch marks on the walls. Stay here, the guards told him. We will protect you with our lives. Hours passed. The fighting continued. Mason could hear explosions in distant parts of the ship. Then the door opened and Lysandra entered. Her royal armor was damaged and purple blood stained her face. "Are you hurt?" Mason asked, surprising himself with his concern. "I will heal," she said. "But we have a bigger problem. The rebels have damaged our ship's engines and communications. We're drifting, defenseless. Can't your other ships help?" Lysandra shook her head. "The traitors sent false orders, scattering the fleet. By the time they realized the deception and return..." She didn't finish, but Mason understood. "The Krell will find us." "Yes," Lysandra confirmed. "Our sensors detect their scout ships already entering this system. They'll discover both us and Earth very soon." Mason looked out at the stars again, thinking of his home planet. Billions of people living their lives, unaware of the danger approaching. Then he looked at Lysandra, proud and wounded, fighting to save her dying race. "If I agree to your proposal," he said slowly, "can we stop them?" Hope flickered in Lysandra's strange purple eyes. "Perhaps, if we act quickly, but you must understand what you're agreeing to. Once our genetics are merged, you will never be fully human again." Mason took a deep breath. The fate of two worlds now rested on his decision. "I understand," he said. "Tell me what we need to do." The attack came from inside the ship. Important members of Lysandra's court had joined with military officers who opposed the human integration plan. As Mason was rushed through smoke-filled hallways, the ship shook from explosions inside. "The Queen?" Mason asked as Kira and Lena led him through small tunnels meant for repair robots. "Fighting," Lena replied with a grim face. "Her personal guards are loyal, but the military leaders are divided. They came out into a hangar bay in chaos. Novanari fought against Novanari while defense systems fired at both sides. A small shuttle waited with engines running, its pilot waving them to hurry aboard." "Wait," Mason protested. "We can't leave without Lysandra." "Those are her orders?" Kira insisted, pushing him toward the shuttle. "You're the backup plan, Mason. If she dies, you're the only hope for our alliance." Before they could reach the shuttle, energy weapons fired across the hangar. The pilot was hit, falling over the controls as the shuttle's systems sparked and died. They were trapped. Calmly, Lena handed Mason a weapon. It shaped itself to fit his hand, connecting directly with his nervous system. "Point and think," she instructed. "It will do the rest." The rebels moved closer, led by Elder Voss himself. "Give up the human," he demanded. "This abomination ends now." "The Queen's word is law," Kira responded, standing next to Mason. "The Queen is dead," Voss announced with cruel satisfaction. "Her rooms were breached 10 minutes ago." Mason felt something break inside him. Not love, perhaps, but a connection he hadn't fully recognized until this moment. The weapon in his hand hummed in response to his emotions. "You're lying," he said quietly. "Novanari cannot lie, human. It's biologically impossible," Voss replied. "Now come quietly and your death will be painless. Your genetic material is still valuable for study." That's when the hangar's massive doors exploded inward. Through the smoke walked Lysandra, her royal armor damaged but intact, purple blood on her face. Behind her came loyal troops attacking the rebels with precision. "Biologically impossible?" she called out to Voss. "Perhaps you should study your own limitations more carefully, Elder." The battle was quick and decisive. Lysandra's forces, though outnumbered, were clearly the elite of her military. As Voss was captured, the Queen approached Mason. "You stayed," she observed. "I didn't have much choice," he replied. Her lips curved slightly. "There's always a choice, Mason Carter. You could have surrendered to Voss. Would that have saved me?" "No," she admitted. "But it might have been less painful than what comes next." As if called by her words, the ship's alarms changed sound. On every screen throughout the hangar, the same image appeared, massive ships coming out of warp points throughout the system. "The Krell," Lysandra whispered. "They've found us." And Earth. The next hours were a blur of activity. The rebel attack had damaged key systems, including the flagship's main weapons. Lysandra gathered her loyal officers in the command center to plan their defense. "We are outnumbered," Admiral Fay reported. "The Krell have brought 5 dreadnoughts and over 50 cruisers. Our fleet is scattered. We have only 7 warships within response range." "What about Earth's defenses?" Mason asked. The officers exchanged looks. "Primitive," Fay said gently. "Their weapons cannot harm Krell ships." On the main screen, they watched as the first Krell ships entered Earth orbit. Human military satellites fired missiles, which the Krell ignored. Their massive ships darkened the skies over major cities. They're starting landing operations, an officer reported. Ground troops will begin deployment within hours. Mason felt sick. Billions of people were about to die, and there was nothing he could do. There must be something, he said desperately. Some weapon, some technology. Lysandra and her chief scientist Diane exchanged looks. There is one possibility, Lysandra said slowly. But the cost is high. What cost? Mason demanded. Our ships are partly biological, Diane explained. They respond to Novanari neural patterns. The flagship's defense system, our most powerful weapon, can be activated manually by a member of the royal bloodline. But you're injured, Mason observed, noting how Lysandra still favored her left side. Yes. The neural load would kill me before the sequence completed. Her purple eyes met his. But a hybrid neural pattern, Novanari and human combined, might succeed where either would fail alone. Mason understood immediately. You need me to control the system with you. The process requires genetic bonding, Diane added. A permanent merging. You would no longer be fully human, nor would the Queen remain fully Novanari. It would make us something new, Lysandra said, something neither of our peoples has seen before. Mason looked at the battle forming around Earth. Would it save them? My people? If it works, Lysandra replied honestly, it saves us all. Mason thought about his life on Earth, his small apartment, his boring job.
He had no family, few friends.
Nothing much to lose, let's do it, he said. They prepared quickly. The procedure would take place in the ship's core, where biological and mechanical systems merged in ways Mason couldn't understand. As Novanari technicians prepared them both, Lysandra spoke to him privately. I must confess something, she said, her mind voice softer than he'd ever heard it. When I said I wanted you as my husband before the court, it wasn't entirely strategic. Mason studied her alien features, now strangely familiar to him. What are you saying? That in studying your species I found something unexpected in myself. An emotion your people call... The ship rocked violently as Krell weapons hit their mark. There was no more time. Mason and Lysandra were placed in connecting chambers at the heart of the ship. Strange liquids filled both chambers. As the fluid rose around him, Mason saw Lysandra looking at him through the glass that separated them. Will it hurt? He asked through their mind link. Yes, she replied simply, but we will face it together. The fluid covered them completely. Mason felt it enter his lungs, but strangely, he could still breathe. Then the pain began. Every cell in his body felt like it was being torn apart and rebuilt. Through the neural link, he could feel Lysandra experiencing the same agony. But there was something else too. He could feel her mind touching his, memories flowing between them. He saw her childhood on a distant world, her training to become queen, the first Krell attack she witnessed, her fear for her people, and she saw him, his lonely childhood, his dreams of space, his first salvage mission, the emptiness he had always felt, like he was meant for something more. As their minds and bodies merged, Mason felt the ship responding around them. Energy built up in its core, drawing power from dimensions he hadn't known existed. Through Lysandra's consciousness, he directed this energy outward, toward the Krell fleet. The last thing he remembered before blackness took him was a blinding flash of light, and Lysandra's voice in his mind. Together, she whispered. Always. Mason opened his eyes slowly. The ceiling above him was unfamiliar. It took him a moment to remember where he was, aboard Lysandra's flagship orbiting Earth, the Krell attack. The genetic bonding. He sat up quickly, too quickly. His body felt strange. Looking down at his arms, he saw silvery patterns traced across his skin where Novanari DNA had mixed with his own. He could feel the ship around him, almost like it was part of his body. Careful, said a familiar voice. The changes are still settling. Lysandra sat beside his bed. She too was transformed. Streaks of human coloring now marked her once uniform complexion. Her eyes were still purple, but the pupils were rounder, more human. Earth? Mason asked immediately. Safe, she assured him. The weapon worked beyond our expectations. Half the Krell fleet was destroyed. The rest retreated. They won't return soon. Mason relaxed slightly. And us, what happened to us? We are something new, Lysandra said, taking his hand. The gesture seemed surprisingly human coming from her. neither fully Novanari nor fully human. The first of a new species, perhaps. Mason looked at their joined hands, hers with hints of human coloring, his with Novanari silver patterns. Can it be reversed? No, she said simply. The changes are permanent. Does that upset you? Mason thought about it. Strangely, it didn't. No, it feels right somehow, Lysandra smiled. It was the first true smile he had seen from her. I feel the same. There is something else you should know. During the bonding, our minds were completely open to each other. I remember, Mason said. I saw your childhood, your training. And I saw your loneliness, your desire for purpose, she finished. But more importantly, I understand now what I was trying to tell you before the procedure. The human emotion I had developed for you. And what emotion is that? Mason asked, though he thought he knew the answer. Love, Lysandra said, the word sounding strange from her lips. An unexpected development, but not an unwelcome one. Mason was saved from responding by a knock at the door. Admiral Fay entered, bowing deeply to them both. Your Majesties, Earth's representatives have arrived. They're ready to begin negotiations. Mason looked at Lysandra in surprise. Your Majesties, plural? You are my consort now, Lysandra explained. Bonded to me genetically, neurologically, and by Novanari law. That makes you royalty, Mason laughed softly. From salvage pilot to alien king. My old friends wouldn't believe it. You may see them again soon, Lysandra said. Part of our negotiations with Earth will include cultural exchanges. And they will need to be prepared for the Krell. They will return, though not for some years. Mason stood carefully, testing his new body. He felt stronger, more aware. His senses were sharper. He could even feel faint thoughts from the Novanari crew members throughout the ship. We should get ready to meet the Earth delegation, he said. They're going to have a lot of questions. Indeed, Lysandra agreed. How does one explain to a planet that they nearly faced extinction, were saved by alien technology, and now one of their own has become something more than human? Carefully, Mason suggested. Very carefully. They dressed in formal Novanari robes. Mason's were designed to match Lysandra's, marking them as a bonded pair. As they walked to the meeting room, crew members bowed to them both. They accept me, Mason observed with surprise. They have no choice, Lysandra said. But more than that, they respect what you did. You saved them, saved us all, and... She hesitated. They can sense the change in me as well. I am more balanced now. Your human adaptability has tempered my Novanari rigidity. In the meeting room, Earth's representatives waited nervously. They were military officers and government officials, hastily gathered after the Krell attack. They stared openly at Mason with his silver-marked skin. Welcome, Lysandra said aloud, using spoken language rather than mind speech for the human's benefit. I am Queen Lysandra of the Novanari Ascendancy, and this is my consort, Mason Carter, formerly of Earth. Carter, one of the officers said in shock. The salvage pilot who disappeared last month? Mason stepped forward. The same. It's a long story, General. One that involves two civilizations on the brink of extinction, and the choice I made to save them both. Over the next hours, they explained everything. The Novanari genetic degradation, the Krell threat, the bonding procedure that had saved Earth from invasion. The human delegation was stunned. So you're saying more of these Krell will come? The Secretary of Defense asked. Eventually, Lysandra confirmed. But you will not face them alone. The Novanari Ascendancy offers an alliance with Earth. We will share technology, knowledge, and protection. In exchange for what? A diplomat asked suspiciously. Genetic diversity, Mason answered. Volunteers willing to help save a dying species through controlled genetic exchange. Nothing forced, nothing invasive. Just cooperation. And you'll be what? The go-between? The general asked Mason. We will be the bridge, Lysandra corrected. The first of many bonds between our peoples. The template for a new future. As the negotiations continued, Mason stood at the window looking down at Earth. From space it looked peaceful, beautiful, unaware of how close it had come to destruction. Soon, humanity would join the wider galactic community. They would face challenges, threats, and wonders they had never imagined. And he would help guide them through it all. Neither fully human nor fully alien, but something new. A bridge between worlds. Later, when the human delegation had departed with preliminary agreements in place, Mason and Lysandra stood alone in their quarters. I never answered your proposal, Mason realized suddenly. Lysandra's expression softened. You did. Not with words, perhaps. Then let me answer with words now, Mason said. He took her hands in his, feeling the strange new connection between them. Genetic, neural, and something more. Yes, I will be your husband, my alien queen. Lysandra smiled, a full human smile that transformed her face. And I will be your wife, my human king. As Earth turned below them, the first mixed fleet of human and Novenari ships began joint patrols of the solar system. It was the beginning of the Galactic Alliance, though few would know how close both species had come to extinction. On the flagship, in royal quarters, a human and an alien, both now something more than they had been, began planning a future neither could have imagined alone. Their children would be the first of a new species, stronger than either of their parent races. And when the Krell returned, they would find not two weakened civilizations but one united force, ready to defend their shared worlds. Mason looked at his silver-marked hand entwined with Lysandra's. Together, he said. Always, she replied, both aloud and in his mind.